Thank you for coming to this screening of Wild Rovers. It is my very big pleasure to introduce Julie Andrews, who will introduce the film for us.
Where do you want me? Here? I always sleep on the left.
Okay.
So there you are. Hello, everybody. What are you doing in the cinema on a beautiful day like this? But thank you for coming on a beautiful day like this. Giulia asked me if I'd introduce the movie, and you'll see why I said yes. Not only when you see the movie, but when you hear these brief words of mine, and I'm not going to stay long. But this film has a really interesting Hollywood history, and I just thought you'd like to know it before you actually see the movie itself. It was the only Western that my husband Blake made, or he did write a very, very simple Western screenplay as his very first attempt at a screenplay with a friend. He wrote it, and but really this was his main and only Western that was filmed, and he was very, very proud of this movie, and it is one of my absolute favorites as well. It's a very different kind of Western. It's not your average Western at all. It has a kind of, I'd call it a psychological movie in a way. It's got so many psychological overtones between, it's about relationships between husband and wife, husband and two sons who vie for the dad's attention and approval. Thank you, darling. It's about the friendship between two cowboys. Thank you, love. It's about the friendship between two cowboys who, one is an older guy played by William Holden, as you know, and one younger man played by Ryan O'Neal. And I saw, one thing I should mention, I saw William Holden just literally, in the most generous way, hand the movie to Ryan. He was loved him dearly, and also gave him this terrific role. And William, being such a great guy and such a good actor, you hardly notice that he's handing it to Ryan, but I know, and anybody connected to it know that. It is also their mortality, the two cowboys, becomes very obvious after they witness the death of a fellow comrade, and they have to take that body, the dead body, into town for burial. The film is all Blake. When I read the screenplay, every line is recognizable to me. His philosophies, his attitudes. I won't go into them, but you'll probably spot a few. He wanted the audience also. He wanted to turn them on their heads. He wanted the audience to root for the bad guys and despise the good guys. And he very much tries to do that. It's a long film, and he hoped to show the endless boredom of those cowboys outdoors on the range, long, tedious days, fixing fences. I'm going to hang on to this one this time. Fixing fences and herding doing the roundups and mending stuff and all of that. I think he succeeded in that. The film just grows in speed, but it starts off very quietly and quite long. Blake, in those days, did not have what they called a final cut of the movie. In other words, he edited it to his delight and then handed it over to the powers that be. In this case, it was the powers that be at MGM. MGM was in those days run by a man that was incredibly sadistic and enjoyed it very much and thought himself, the cat's whiskers, all of that. He's very famous, but I won't mention his name. He proceeded to butcher the film, and Blake was there beside him, and he'd say, "Nah, you can't have that. I won't allow that." And Blake didn't have the authority to say no, but he fought, and little by little, the film was whittled away to the point where Blake was in agony every night. He'd come home and say, God, he took out this or he took out that, and I don't have any say. And eventually he did hand the cut over, having saved maybe a small piece here or a small piece there. But when he handed it over, the head of MGM in those days took it over once again and brutally cut it even more. And when it came out, it was just simply a kind of cops and robbers Western with none of the overtones or the things that Blake so desperately wanted to convey. And years later, it was not a success. It wasn't, obviously it wasn't. It was just a rather dreary Western. But years later, Blake got a phone call from a gentleman who said, you don't know me, Mr. Edwards, but I run the archives at MGM, and I went down for something else and found this huge pile of outtakes down there, and I wondered if you'd be interested in them. Well, I've never seen Blake so gloriously happy, because he said, are you kidding? I would love them back. He took those outtakes, which were all the ones that had been cut. This is many years later, he put them all back into the film the way he wanted it, and that's the cut you'll be seeing today. The film is exquisitely shot. The cameraman was Phil Lathrop, and the music, the editing, everything by Blake, and what he sets up, the way he sets up his camera is extraordinary. This is why it's so personal to me, because his talent is so obvious now that the whole film is all together. He had the most wonderful composer for the film, who is the famous Jerry Goldsmith, and his work is magnificent, particularly in a horse sequence, and I won't say any more, but I think you'll come up out of your seats. I really do. I hope you will, anyway. Now, there's a very small little story, unless you've got a couple of questions.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I took the whole thing, didn't I? There's a sweet story. In the middle of the film, you'll notice that both cowboys go to the baths after a long ride. And the little boy who brings them the water for their baths, drags in the bucket and all of that, happens just to be our 9-year-old son at the time. So you might want to look for a tow-headed little handsome guy. And he's now hugely tall, taller than you, my darling Sam, I think. And a filmmaker in his own right, and a commercial filmmaker as well.
So you were on the set. It was Monument Valley, right? It was Monument Valley.
Monument Valley and the border on Mexico. And you could see the Mexican border from where we were shooting. We were in America, but very, very close. And this incredible old ranch house, which was magnificent. And then going into Monument Valley and shooting there every day. That's when I mostly was visiting Blake with the children, and just to see it in the way I saw it, to watch William Holden ride. He was a great horseman, and you'll see the long tracking shots of him racing out on a horse and the things he does, and it just shows what a wonderful actor and a lovely guy he was. Well, both of them were. That's what I wanted to say. Because I love this film so much, I'm going to sit way at the back and try to shut up. And I do hope you enjoy it very, very much. There, I dropped the last one just as I finished. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.